Silence is often misunderstood. In a world filled with noise, chatter, and the constant need to express, silence is treated as emptiness, as though it carries no weight. But silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of depth. When silence enters a room, it speaks more than 1,000 voices. It is in silence that clarity rises, in silence that the mind returns to its natural state, and in silence that truth can no longer be hidden. Words can disguise, they can decorate, they can distract. But silence strips everything bare, leaving only what is real. Think about how often we rely on words to prove, to justify, to explain. Yet the most profound experiences of life are wordless. When you stand before a mountain range, words fail. When you witness the birth of life, there is no speech strong enough to contain it. When grief pierces the heart, it is not words that hold you, but the silent presence of someone beside you. Silence is a language that goes deeper than sound because silence communicates directly with the soul. People fear silence because it reveals. In conversation, silence is often taken as weakness or lack of knowledge, but it is the opposite. Silence in the right moment is strength. The one who can remain still, who does not rush to defend, who does not rush to attack, has already mastered a level of power that words cannot reach. Words are reactive. Silence is sovereign. Silence does not need validation. It waits, it absorbs, it observes. To embrace silence is to embrace inner power. The mind is a restless tool, constantly jumping from one thought to the next, creating noise even in the absence of external sound. This inner chatter prevents one from hearing the subtler currents of life. Silence is the practice of stilling this inner noise, reducing the storm of thoughts until clarity emerges. When you learn to be silent within, you discover how much energy you were wasting in resistance, in unnecessary arguments, in defending identities that were never real. Silence gives that energy back to you. Silence also sharpens awareness. In noise, details are lost. In silence, every detail becomes alive. When you sit in stillness and listen without judgment, you begin to notice the rhythm of your breath, the sensations of your body, the play of emotions rising and falling. You begin to notice the world without the filter of commentary. A tree is no longer just a tree, it becomes a presence. A bird's song is no longer background, it becomes a message. Life, in silence, stops being ordinary. It becomes vivid, immediate, unfiltered. Silence transforms relationships as well. Many conflicts are fed not by the problem itself, but by the noise of repeated words, accusations, and defenses. Silence has the power to dissolve conflict because it refuses to add fuel. When one person chooses silence, the storm has no wind to carry it further. Silence does not mean suppression, it means maturity. It is the strength to choose peace over noise, clarity over chaos. In relationships, silence often communicates love more deeply than words. A look, a shared stillness, a presence without distraction speaks volumes. The sages and masters of the past always valued silence as a doorway to wisdom. They knew that silence is not emptiness but fullness. In silence, the teachings of the universe become audible. In silence, insights come like whispers. The greatest answers in life are not shouted, they are whispered within the heart. But to hear them, one must be silent. If the mind is too loud, the whispers are drowned. Silence, then, is not passive. It is active listening. It is receptivity. It is the art of tuning into frequencies that words cannot carry. Consider the strength of silence in daily life. When insulted, the impulse is to respond, to retaliate, but silence disarms the attack. When confronted with confusion, the impulse is to rush to clarity through speech. But silence allows space for truth to emerge naturally. Silence is patience embodied. It is restraint that eventually becomes wisdom. In moments of decision, silence allows you to hear what fear tries to conceal. In moments of pain, silence allows you to feel what healing requires. The modern world resists silence. Everywhere there is distraction, music playing, devices buzzing, conversations overlapping. People fill silence with anything they can find because silence feels uncomfortable. But the discomfort comes only because silence reveals what has been hidden beneath noise. It shows you the thoughts you avoid, the emotions you suppress, the truths you deny. This is why silence feels heavy at first. But to sit with it, to endure it, to breathe in it, is to begin the process of inner liberation. Silence also teaches humility. When one is silent, the ego has no ground to stand on. Ego thrives in words, I am this, I did that, I know more, I want recognition. But silence dissolves this need. In silence, one realizes how small words are compared to the immensity of existence. Silence makes you humble before life, humble before the mystery, humble before the forces that cannot be captured in speech. This humility is not weakness, it is the highest strength. Even nature speaks in silence. The mountain does not shout its majesty, it simply stands. The ocean does not announce its depth, it simply is. The stars do not argue for attention, they shine quietly in the night sky. The most powerful presences are silent presences. This is a lesson for human life as well. True power does not boast, it radiates. True wisdom does not argue, it emanates. True love does not insist, it simply flows. When silence becomes your companion, you begin to notice the subtle movements of energy around you and within you. You begin to understand people beyond their words. You sense intention, you feel vibration, you perceive truth without needing confirmation. Silence trains intuition. It strengthens the ability to know without explanation, to see without eyes, to hear without ears. This is why silence has been the foundation of all spiritual disciplines. Silence speaks louder than words because it does not rely on sound to be heard. It speaks through presence, through depth, through clarity. It cannot be argued with. It cannot be interrupted. It cannot be misunderstood. Silence speaks in the language of truth, a language older than speech, a language that every heart understands but few choose to listen to. In life, many people believe that for every change they make, for every choice they decide upon, there must be a declaration, an announcement, an outward sign for the world to recognize. Yet the truth is different. True decisions are not made for the applause of others. They are not validated by external recognition. A decision is real when it takes root in silence, when it transforms you from within before anyone else notices. The most powerful choices are those carried like a flame inside, burning quietly, reshaping you without the need to prove anything to anyone. When a decision is made silently, it possesses a strength that words cannot carry. Words, once spoken, often lose their weight. They can be challenged, judged, and questioned. They can attract doubt or ridicule from those who do not understand the direction you are moving toward. But a silent decision, one that is guarded inside your heart, cannot be touched by such things. It matures in the soil of patience, grows in the depth of persistence, and reveals itself not in words, but in actions and in the undeniable changes of your life. The human tendency to announce stems from a desire to be recognized, to be validated, to show the world that we are in motion. Yet this very act can sometimes weaken the energy of a decision. The moment you speak it, you invite the weight of expectations, the opinions of others, and the invisible chains of judgment. What once was pure and strong inside of you becomes diluted by external interference. That is why some of the greatest transformations happen in silence. The decision is carried within, nourished by discipline, hidden from unnecessary eyes, until the time comes when it no longer needs words, because the result speaks louder than any declaration could. Consider the way seeds grow beneath the soil. You cannot see their progress. There is no announcement, no broadcast. But the growth is happening silently, hidden, steady, and then one day, without warning, a sprout emerges from the ground, undeniable and real. This is the way of silent decisions. They are planted deep, away from noise, and when they break through into the visible world, they do so with undeniable strength because they were never dependent on anyone's approval to grow. In the stillness of a decision kept to oneself, there is also freedom. Freedom from comparison, from doubt cast by others, from premature questioning. When you hold your decision quietly, you protect it like a flame from the wind. You give it the chance to grow into a steady fire before the world can try to extinguish it. And when at last the fire burns brightly, it does not need to be explained. It does not need to be justified, for its light becomes its own proof. Every silent decision also carries discipline within it. To act without announcing requires strength. It requires a refusal to seek immediate validation. It requires the maturity to know that transformation is not a performance, it is a process. In this discipline lies a power greater than any recognition. For while others are busy speaking about what they will do, the one who decides in silence is already doing, already becoming, already changing. Life does not reward those who merely declare. Life rewards those who follow through, those whose decisions shape their daily habits, whose silence is filled with consistent action. In this way, the decision that was never announced becomes a visible reality, undeniable and irrefutable, because it was never dependent on words to begin with. This way of choosing without announcing also brings clarity. When you speak less, you listen more to your own inner voice, to your own inner alignment. Without the noise of opinions, you can hear yourself more clearly. You can refine your decision, strengthen it, redirect it if necessary, all without the burden of defending it to anyone else. Silence gives you space to make your decision fully your own, to anchor it deeply in your being. The strength of such choices is timeless. Many of the most profound changes in life happen without fanfare. A decision to leave behind old habits, a decision to discipline the body, a decision to master the mind, a decision to rise before the sun and train in solitude. These are not things that need to be spoken about. They are things that, once done consistently, shine through in the way a person carries themselves, in the clarity of their presence, in the energy that surrounds them. True decisions do not need an audience. They need commitment. They need action. They need patience. They need to be lived rather than spoken. And when they are lived fully, their results will speak for themselves louder than any words ever could. To decide without announcement is to trust yourself enough to not need external validation. It is to honor the sacred process of transformation by allowing it to unfold without unnecessary exposure. It is to carry your choice like a secret weapon, drawing strength from its hiddenness until the day it reveals itself through undeniable change. And so, the path of inner power is the path of quiet choices. The world does not need to be told. The world will see. The decision will show itself in time, not through speech, but through the radiance of what you have become. Before words are spoken, before sound takes form, before the air vibrates with syllables and tone, energy has already declared its message. What we often fail to realize is that silence is not empty. It is filled with signals, with presence, with currents of energy that reveal more than speech ever could. When someone steps into a room, before they utter a single word, their state of being communicates. The body is a vessel and energy leaks from it in countless ways, through posture, through breath, through the weight of a glance, through the rhythm of movements. Words may be chosen, but energy is authentic. This is why we often sense a change in someone long before they express it verbally. A friend might claim everything is fine, yet something within us detects the subtle withdrawal of energy. It is in the shortened eye contact, in the lessened enthusiasm, in the delayed responses. Their energy has already stepped back, and the words are only a delayed confirmation. Energy always precedes language. It is the first messenger, the primary current. Language is secondary. Consider relationships. When connection is strong, words flow effortlessly. They are not heavy, they are carried by a current of genuine energy. But when connection begins to weaken, the words remain at first, but the force behind them changes. The warmth that once infused them is replaced by distance. The laughter does not reach the eyes. The compliments feel rehearsed. The conversations drag. Energy has already withdrawn, but the mouth continues to move. The sound lingers, but the essence is gone. This withdrawal of energy is not abrupt. It begins subtly. It can start with a quiet hesitation, with a thought left unspoken, with a reduced eagerness to share. It is almost invisible at first, yet over time it grows undeniable. The silence becomes heavier than the words themselves. What is unsaid carries more truth than what is spoken. To perceive this requires attentiveness, an awareness sharpened by presence. The more one cultivates sensitivity to energy, the clearer these signals become. In conflicts, this principle is especially visible. Many arguments do not truly begin with words, but with energy that has already shifted. The sigh, the cold glance, the stiff body, the change in tone, these are signals that communication has already broken down before words attempt to bridge the gap. By the time the sharp words arrive, the energy has long since retreated. The verbal expression is merely the shadow of a withdrawal that began in silence. This understanding invites a new approach to communication. Instead of only listening to words, we learn to listen to energy. To pay attention not only to what is said, but to the weight, tone, and presence that surround it. To sense whether someone's spirit leans toward us or pulls away. To recognize that energy reveals truths words attempt to disguise. In our own lives, the same applies. There are times when we continue to speak, to justify, to explain, to repeat the same patterns of expression, yet our energy has already stepped back. We no longer feel engaged, no longer carry the same spark, no longer wish to pour ourselves into the situation. The body remains, the words are spoken, but the energy has withdrawn. This is why people often describe a sense of emptiness despite ongoing conversation. Speech without energy is hollow. The deeper lesson lies in the fact that energy cannot be forced to remain where it no longer belongs. It is fluid like water. It seeks alignment. When it withdraws, it signals that something is shifting, that the resonance is breaking. To ignore this and cling to words is to deny the truth of the flow. Words can delay recognition, but they cannot reverse the tide of energy. We also encounter this in our personal growth. A phase of life may continue outwardly, the same routines, the same responsibilities, the same words exchanged daily, but internally energy begins to withdraw. What once felt alive now feels heavy. What once inspired now feels burdensome. The energy steps back before we are ready to admit it to ourselves. Only later do the words follow. This no longer serves me. I must move on. I cannot stay here anymore. The withdrawal of energy is the seed of transformation. Silence is the medium where this withdrawal first becomes visible. Silence is not absence, it is presence without noise. It is in silence that we can sense the shifts of energy most clearly. When words stop, what remains is the truth of energy. And when energy withdraws, no amount of words can conceal it. Understanding this gives us clarity in relationships, in decisions, in self-awareness. Instead of clinging to words, we learn to observe the subtler language of energy. It prevents us from deceiving ourselves with explanations and forces us to confront what is already happening beneath the surface. When energy begins to retreat, it signals that alignment has changed. Words may come later to explain, but by then the message has long been spoken in silence. Energy withdraws before words do because energy is the source. Words are crafted, but energy is lived. Words are tools, but energy is essence. The body can be trained to say what the mind wants, but it cannot disguise the vibration it carries. The truth of a person is revealed not in the language of their lips, but in the atmosphere they bring with them. Before the first sound is spoken, the energy has already spoken volumes. In a world that constantly demands attention, where noise competes for every corner of the mind, silence becomes more than an absence of sound. It becomes a shield. Inner peace is not easily found. It is cultivated, protected, and maintained with awareness. Silence, both external and internal, acts as a guardian of that peace. To embrace silence is to choose stillness over chaos, reflection over reaction, clarity over confusion. It is in silence that the mind begins to rest, the heart begins to heal, and the body begins to release the weight it has carried for too long. Without silence, peace is fragile, fleeting, and easily broken. With silence, peace becomes strong, resilient, and deeply rooted. When silence enters, it does not come to fill space. It comes to open space. It is not about emptiness, but about fullness, fullness of presence, fullness of awareness, fullness of self. Silence allows the mind to stop chasing and instead start observing. It protects inner peace by creating a boundary between what the world projects and what the self accepts. Silence is the pause that prevents words of anger from escaping, the breath that slows down the rhythm of anxiety, the distance that saves the mind from drowning in endless chatter. Silence is not weakness, it is strength. It does not remove power, it redirects it inward, where it can be cultivated and transformed into clarity. Every human being carries a storm within, memories, regrets, expectations, fears. These storms are noisy, restless, and demanding. If we meet them with more noise, they grow louder, but if we meet them with silence, their intensity begins to dissolve. Silence does not erase pain or eliminate struggle, but it gives the inner world space to reorganize itself. Peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to remain centered in the midst of it. Silence is the practice that makes such centering possible. It allows the storm to rage without pulling the mind into it. It protects peace by creating a safe distance between experience and reaction. In silence, energy shifts. The voice of the mind is not silenced by force, but by observation. When the mind speaks and no attention is given, it loses its control. Thoughts arise and fade, emotions move like waves, but silence remains steady. This steadiness is what protects inner peace. Instead of being carried away by every thought, silence teaches the ability to remain as the observer, unshaken, calm, and still. In such stillness, strength grows. The quiet is not empty, it is alive with awareness. It protects inner peace because it does not engage in battles that are not worth fighting. Silence also protects peace in relationships. Words often spoken too quickly create wounds that take years to heal. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, prevents unnecessary conflict. It gives space for emotions to settle before decisions are made. It teaches patience, allowing understanding to rise before judgment takes hold. Silence does not mean avoidance. It means maturity. It means holding the power to respond without being controlled by impulse. In this way, silence becomes a tool that protects not only one's own peace, but the peace shared with others. There is also an inner silence that goes beyond the absence of sound or words. It is the silence of letting go, of no longer arguing with the past, no longer resisting what is. This silence protects peace at the deepest level because it ends the constant inner war. The energy that was once spent on fighting, on resisting, on holding grudges is released. What remains is lightness, freedom, clarity. This silence is not passive, it is active. It is a conscious choice to stop feeding the chaos and instead protect what is most valuable, peace within. When silence becomes a practice, the body also benefits. Tension stored in muscles, stress hidden in breath, and exhaustion rooted in constant stimulation all begin to soften. Silence gives the body space to recharge. It lowers the rhythm of the heart, deepens the breath, and restores balance to the nervous system. Protecting inner peace through silence is not only a mental act, but also a physical necessity. Without silence, the body is overworked, overstimulated, and constantly drained. With silence, it is nourished, restored, and strengthened. The protection silence offers is subtle. It is not loud or visible. It is felt quietly, deeply, in the way the heart no longer rushes, the way the mind no longer clings, the way the spirit no longer feels heavy. Silence teaches that peace is not something to be found outside, but something preserved within. Every moment of silence is a decision to step back from the noise of the world and return to the sanctuary of the self. In that sanctuary, peace is safe, unshaken, and whole. In life, the mind is restless by nature. It wants to know, to grasp, to hold on to certainty as if certainty itself could give peace. Yet when you observe carefully, you see that chasing answers is like chasing the horizon. The faster you run, the further it seems to stretch away from you. The mind becomes more unsettled the more it hunts for clarity. It is not the absence of answers that troubles most people. It is the compulsion to demand them before their time. This chase exhausts energy, distracts from the present, and creates tension where stillness could have been found. Consider the way water clears itself. When stirred, it is cloudy, difficult to see through, disturbed. If you force the particles to settle with your hands, you only stir the water more. The clarity arrives not because of action, but because of patience. In the same way, when you sit still and stop chasing, answers appear on their own. They rise from the silence of the mind, not from its noise. Many fail to realize this truth and therefore spend their lives running after clarity, rather than creating the conditions where clarity naturally reveals itself. The chase creates pressure. It tells the mind that it is lacking something, that it is incomplete until the answer is found. And so, dissatisfaction grows. A question can be like a seed. If you plant it, you cannot shout at the soil demanding growth. You cannot dig it up every day to see if it has sprouted. The seed needs its time, its silence beneath the surface, its process. To chase the answer is to kill the seed before it has had the chance to open. This is why so many people live in frustration. They try to accelerate what cannot be rushed. The universe does not respond to demand, it responds to alignment. A question placed into silence becomes a point of focus, but not a weight. The mind can hold the question gently without tightening around it. In that gentle holding, the unconscious works, the energies align, and eventually an answer blossoms without effort. The harder you chase, the further away it seems. The more you soften, the more naturally it comes to you. Look at the way a river flows. It does not chase the ocean, yet it arrives there without fail. The river is constant, it moves forward without needing to know each turn ahead. Humans, on the other hand, want to know the entire map before taking a step. This hesitation, this craving for answers before movement, becomes the very reason they remain stuck. They want certainty without trust, outcomes without journeys, clarity without patience. And so, life feels heavy because they are demanding from it what it cannot give on command. When you release the chase, something different occurs. Space opens. Energy that was once tied up in demand and restlessness becomes available for awareness. In that awareness, you notice signs, patterns, synchronicities that were invisible while you were searching too hard. The eyes soften, the ears sharpen, and the heart becomes attentive. Answers that seemed hidden before reveal themselves, not because they suddenly appeared, but because your perception expanded enough to see them. There is great discipline in waiting. Waiting is not idleness. It is a practice of strength, a cultivation of inner silence. When the mind accepts that not every question requires an immediate solution, it begins to relax. That relaxation is not weakness, it is the gateway to wisdom. The most profound insights rarely arrive under pressure. They arrive like whispers when the environment is calm enough to hear them. Many people mistake activity for progress. They run from book to book, from teacher to teacher, from idea to idea, hoping to stumble upon an answer that will quiet their doubts. But the doubt does not dissolve because of information. It dissolves because of understanding. And understanding is not given, it is realized. Realization cannot be chased, it must be lived into. Like dawn breaking after the longest night, it comes when conditions align. Not because you demanded the sun to rise faster. When you stop chasing, you begin living. You live into your questions instead of fighting them. You allow experiences to shape you rather than rushing ahead to conclusions. The chase is a symptom of impatience, but patience is the ground where wisdom grows. It is not about suppressing the question, nor about ignoring curiosity. It is about trusting that answers have their timing. Some arrive quickly, others take years, and some remain unspoken but still guide you without words. This approach changes your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of fearing it, you learn to dwell in it, to breathe within it. You recognize that uncertainty itself is not your enemy, it is your teacher. To live without all the answers is to live honestly. To accept the unknown is to accept life as it is. And in that acceptance, the frantic chase begins to dissolve. When the mind is still, answers arise. They come not as rigid formulas, but as insights, as intuitions, as quiet knowing. This knowing is deeper than the surface answers people often run after. It carries weight, not because it was hunted down, but because it was discovered in silence. The deepest truths are not chased, they are revealed in their own time. So the practice is not in pursuit, but in presence. It is not in demand, but in openness. Each moment becomes the ground where the answer can grow. And until it grows, you continue to walk, to breathe, to live. The question does not bind you, it accompanies you, shaping the way you see, deepening your awareness, humbling your spirit. This is the strength of not chasing answers. Silence is not the absence of sound, nor is it a void to be feared. Silence is a presence, a living force that exists beyond the constant movement of words, thoughts, and noise. To learn to listen to silence is to recognize that there is a language spoken in stillness, a wisdom that cannot be conveyed through ordinary speech. The world around us is filled with sound and distraction, but the true teacher often arrives not in the chaos, but in the quiet spaces we tend to overlook. The art of listening to silence is not about forcing the mind to become empty, but about allowing yourself to attune to what lies beneath the noise. When you pause long enough to listen deeply, you begin to realize that silence is not mute. It has texture, depth, and resonance. In silence, you discover the rhythm of your own breath, the pulse of your heartbeat, the subtle shifting of energy within your body. These are not trivial details, they are gateways to awareness. Silence is the mirror that reflects what words cannot touch. It reveals not just the world outside, but the inner terrain that often remains hidden when our minds are crowded with chatter. To listen to silence is to step into alignment with a truth that has always been present but rarely noticed. Many fear silence because it exposes them. In quiet moments, the distractions fall away and what remains is the raw state of being. The unresolved emotions, the unspoken thoughts, the truths we try to hide all surface when there is no noise to cover them. This is why so many surround themselves with endless stimulation, endless conversation, endless noise. It is not that silence is unbearable. It is that silence makes us face what we have avoided. But within that confrontation lies the opportunity for growth. Silence is not the enemy. It is the guide that teaches us to sit with ourselves without running away. Listening to silence requires patience. In the beginning, it can feel uncomfortable, as if there is nothing happening. The mind will try to fill the space, to invent sound, to resist the stillness. But if you stay with it long enough, something begins to shift. You start to notice the subtle details that were always there, but drowned out by noise. The whisper of wind moving through the air, the faint hum of life surrounding you, the vibration of your own energy field, all these reveal themselves to those who are willing to listen. Silence teaches you that life is not only happening in the grand gestures and loud expressions, but also in the spaces between. In silence, the ego loses some of its grip. Words often reinforce identity, roles, and separation, but silence has no need for such constructs. It does not care about status or comparison. It invites you into a space where you are not what others think of you, nor even what you think of yourself. You are simply present. This state of presence is not passive. It is alive, vibrant, and filled with power. To listen to silence is to return to the essence of who you are beneath all the noise of conditioning. Silence is also the birthplace of clarity. Decisions made in noise are often clouded by emotion, impulse, or external influence. But when you retreat into silence, the fog begins to lift. You can see more clearly what matters, what does not, and what direction calls to you. The mind, when quieted, becomes a clear surface of water reflecting truth. This is not an intellectual clarity alone, but a clarity that arises from the whole being, body, mind, and spirit. Silence allows intuition to speak, and intuition does not need words. The great paradox is that silence is not empty at all. It is full. It is the source from which sound arises, the canvas upon which life paints itself. To listen to silence is to tune into the foundation of existence itself. All sounds eventually return to silence, just as all movements return to stillness. When you learn to rest in silence, you are learning to rest in the eternal rhythm of life. You begin to notice that silence is not separate from you. It is part of you, just as much as breath and thought. Silence also heals. In silence, the nervous system calms, the body releases tension, and the heart finds balance. Healing does not always require doing. It often requires listening. When you listen to silence, you give yourself the gift of space, and in that space, the fragments of your being can begin to come together. Silence teaches acceptance, not through words, but through presence. It allows the storm within to pass without resistance, leaving a deeper calm in its wake. Learning to listen to silence is an art because it demands practice and openness. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It must be approached with humility and patience. Over time, as you deepen your listening, you will discover that silence is never truly absent. Even in the busiest environments, even in the midst of noise, there is a layer of silence beneath everything. It is always there, waiting for you to notice. The true mastery lies not only in sitting in a quiet room, but in carrying the awareness of silence into every aspect of life. In conversations, silence becomes the space that allows understanding to grow. In action, silence becomes the foundation from which energy flows more purely. In thought, silence becomes the ground that steadies the mind. Silence is not a pause between moments. It is the essence that makes moments possible. To listen to silence is to listen to life itself in its most unadorned and powerful form,